We live in a world that fears silence. The moment we're left alone, we reach for our phones, scroll endlessly, or call someone, anything to fill the quiet. But the truth is, loneliness isn't caused by being alone. It's caused by losing touch with yourself. You can be surrounded by people, messages, and conversations and still feel invisible. Because connection isn't about presence, it's about meaning. Being alone is not a punishment. It's a mirror. It reflects what you've been avoiding, what you haven't healed, and who you truly are beneath the noise. The reason most people feel lonely is because they've never learned how to be at peace with their own thoughts. They've spent so much time trying to be seen loved and understood that they forgot how to see love and understand themselves. When you're alone, you meet your real self. The one who doesn't perform, doesn't compare, doesn't chase approval. The one who simply is. And that version of you, the quiet one, holds all your truth. It knows what you really want, what you're meant to do, and who you're meant to become. But you can only hear that voice when the world goes silent. We were never taught how to sit with ourselves. We were taught how to fit in, how to be liked, how to entertain and impress, but not how to breathe through the silence, not how to find comfort in solitude. And that's why loneliness feels so heavy, because we mistake disconnection from self for disconnection from others. We think we need someone to fill the emptiness. What we really need is presence, our own. There's a difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness drains you. Solitude restores you. Loneliness is searching for someone to understand you. Solitude is finally understanding yourself. Loneliness looks outward. Solitude looks inward. One keeps you dependent, the other sets you free. You'll never truly stop feeling lonely until you learn to enjoy your own company. Not tolerate it, enjoy it. To wake up and feel grateful for a moment of peace. To go for a walk without needing to post it. To have a meal without checking your phone. To be still and realize you are already whole. That's where strength begins. Because when you find comfort in your own presence, you stop begging for validation. You stop chasing attention. You stop settling for people who make you feel alone even when you're with them. The truth is, the people who are most comfortable alone are the ones who create the deepest connections. Why? Because they don't seek relationships out of need. They build them out of value. They know how to listen without expecting. They love without clinging. They give without losing themselves. They bring peace, not pressure. So, if you feel lonely right now, don't rush to escape it. Sit with it. Ask it what it's trying to teach you. Maybe it's reminding you to reconnect with your purpose. Maybe it's calling you to heal the parts of you that feel unseen. Or maybe it's inviting you to slow down and meet yourself again. Because the truth about being alone is this: it's not a curse, it's a classroom. It's where your power returns. It's where you rebuild confidence that isn't dependent on anyone else. It's where you become whole again. Learn to be alone, and you'll never fear loneliness again. Because when you're at peace with who you are, you stop searching for home in other people. You realize you were home all along. Loneliness is not the absence of people, it's the absence of connection with yourself. You can sit in a room filled with laughter, conversations, and warmth, and still feel like no one sees you. That emptiness that echoes inside has nothing to do with who's around you. It has everything to do with how deeply you're connected to your own being. Most of us confuse company with connection. We think if we surround ourselves with people, if we're liked, if we're noticed, we'll never feel lonely again. But no number of friends, followers, or relationships can fill a void that exists within you. Loneliness begins when you lose touch with yourself. When you silence your inner voice just to fit in. When you ignore what your heart truly needs just to keep others happy. When you bury your feelings because you fear being misunderstood. You start drifting away from who you really are. The more you try to be everything for everyone else, the more invisible you become to yourself. And soon, even in a crowd, you feel isolated because no one can connect to a version of you that isn't real. You see, true connection isn't about proximity, it's about authenticity. It's about being honest with yourself first. It's about understanding your emotions instead of running from them. The people who seem at peace alone are not special. They've simply learned how to listen to their own soul. They've learned how to find comfort in their own company. They don't depend on others to feel seen or valued because they've already learned how to see and value themselves. That's why their presence feels calm. That's why they don't fear solitude. We often treat loneliness like a problem that needs fixing, but it's really a signal that something inside needs attention. It's your heart whispering, "Come back to me." It's reminding you that you've been giving too much of yourself away, that you've been living on autopilot, that you've forgotten what peace feels like. The cure isn't more noise, more people, or more distractions. It's connection. The quiet kind that starts within. You cannot connect deeply with others if you are disconnected from yourself. You cannot build honest relationships if you wear masks just to be accepted. The moment you begin to embrace your imperfections, your fears, your truth, that's when the walls of loneliness start to fall. Because connection grows in honesty, not performance. The world doesn't need your perfection, it needs your presence. Spend time alone, not to escape the world, but to meet yourself again. Sit in silence. Let your thoughts unfold without judgment. Ask yourself what you really want, what you really feel, what you've been avoiding. At first, it may feel uncomfortable because solitude exposes what you've been hiding under the noise. But that discomfort is growth. That silence is clarity. When you reconnect with yourself, you start to feel grounded again. You stop chasing temporary highs and start building lasting peace. You begin to understand that you were never truly lonely. You were just disconnected from your essence. The more you nurture that connection, the less you crave external validation. You stop seeking love out of emptiness and start giving it from abundance. You stop settling for half-hearted relationships because you finally understand your worth. Loneliness fades when you learn to enjoy your own company. When you realize you don't need someone to complete you because you were never incomplete. When you start to love your solitude instead of fearing it, that's when the world opens up differently. People don't replace your loneliness, they reflect your wholeness back to you. The truth is, the most meaningful connections you'll ever create are born after you reconnect with yourself. When you feel whole inside, your relationships stop being a place to hide your emptiness. They become a space to share your fullness. And that's when you discover that loneliness was never a punishment. It was an invitation to come home to yourself, to rebuild that sacred bond you once had with your own soul, and to remember that the connection you were always searching for was never outside, it was within you. Being alone is a skill, a space where clarity and growth are born. Most people fear being alone because they mistake solitude for isolation. They associate quiet with emptiness and stillness with sadness. But solitude is not about being cut off from the world, it's about reconnecting with yourself. It's in those moments of silence when the noise fades and the world pauses that you begin to truly see, think, and understand. Being alone is not something that happens to you. It's something you learn to embrace, something you practice until it becomes your strength. The ability to be alone without feeling lonely is one of the most powerful skills a person can develop. It teaches you to stand firm when life feels uncertain, to find peace when everything outside feels chaotic. It allows you to separate the voice of the world from the voice within. When you can sit with your own thoughts without distraction, you begin to uncover what's real, your fears, your dreams, your values, your truth. It's in solitude that self-awareness takes shape, and without self-awareness, growth is impossible. We live in a society that celebrates constant connection, messages, notifications, endless interaction. We've become addicted to being surrounded by noise because silence forces us to face ourselves. We scroll to escape our thoughts, talk to fill the gaps, and keep ourselves busy to avoid reflection. But when you learn the skill of being alone, you stop running from those moments. You start listening instead. You realize that the silence isn't empty, it's full of answers. Every person who has ever grown into greatness has spent time alone. Because solitude sharpens the mind the way pressure shapes a diamond. It's in those quiet hours when ideas form, when reflection deepens, when strength rebuilds. When you're alone, you stop performing. You stop pleasing. You stop pretending. You strip away every layer that doesn't belong to you until you meet the core of who you are. That's where clarity is born. That's where purpose begins to whisper. The world often tells you that success comes from action, but action without reflection is directionless. Being alone gives you that reflection. It helps you see where you're heading and why. It gives you the courage to make decisions that align with your truth rather than others' expectations. When you can sit quietly with yourself and not feel the urge to escape, you've mastered something most people never will. You've learned to be your own company, your own motivation, your own peace. Solitude is not about cutting yourself off. It's about connecting more deeply. It's the pause before the breakthrough, the space where creativity breathes, and the soil where wisdom grows. You can't grow in noise because noise distracts you from what matters. Growth happens when you slow down enough to hear your own thoughts and face what you've been avoiding. That's why being alone feels uncomfortable at first, because solitude exposes truth. It reveals what you need to fix, what you need to let go of, and what you need to become. When you start valuing your alone time, you stop seeing it as loneliness and start seeing it as alignment. You learn that solitude doesn't mean being without love. It means building love within. You discover your rhythms, your boundaries, and your needs. You begin to understand that not everyone will walk your path, and that's okay. Growth often requires separation. It's in the space between who you were and who you're becoming that transformation happens, and solitude is the bridge that carries you there. Being alone teaches you discipline. The discipline to be patient, to listen, to stay still while the world moves fast. It teaches you that peace is not found in people or places, but in presence. The more time you spend alone, the more grounded you become. You no longer depend on others to make you feel complete. You no longer chase approval to feel valuable. You start creating from a place of clarity, not confusion. And in that clarity, growth happens naturally. You see your life from a higher perspective. You learn to let go of what no longer serves you. You stop forcing connections that drain you and start nurturing the ones that align with your peace. You become intentional about how you spend your time, who you share your energy with, and what you allow into your mind. You realize that being alone is not a weakness to overcome, but a strength to master. It's the foundation on which resilience, creativity, and authenticity are built. It's where you stop running from yourself and start growing into the person you were always meant to be. You attract the right people only after you learn to enjoy your own company. Most of us grow up believing that happiness depends on who we have around us: friends, family, partners, or even approval from strangers. We think that being surrounded by people will make us feel whole, that love from others will fill the empty spaces within us. But the truth is, you can't attract the right kind of people until you find peace in being alone. Because the relationships you attract are a reflection of the relationship you have with yourself. When you don't enjoy your own company, you search for distractions to avoid facing yourself. You cling to people out of fear, not love. You settle for attention instead of connection. You accept relationships that drain you because silence feels unbearable. You mistake being wanted for being valued. And as long as you carry that emptiness, you'll keep drawing people who mirror it. You'll meet those who take more than they give, who confuse affection with possession, and who leave you feeling lonelier than before. That cycle continues until you pause and decide to rebuild the most important relationship of all, the one you have with yourself. Learning to enjoy your own company is not about isolation, it's about self-discovery. It's the process of learning who you are when no one is watching. It's sitting in stillness long enough to understand your thoughts, your emotions, and your desires. It's finding comfort in your own presence without needing validation. It's about knowing that your worth doesn't depend on how many people like you, but on how deeply you accept yourself. When you start treating your solitude as sacred time instead of something to escape, your entire energy changes. That shift in energy is what attracts the right people. Because when you enjoy your own company, you stop projecting neediness. You stop chasing people who don't see your value. You stop tolerating relationships built on insecurity. You begin to move differently, with confidence, with peace, with boundaries. The right people feel that. They're drawn to your wholeness, not your wounds. They come into your life not to complete you, but to complement you. When you like who you are, you no longer beg others to stay. You no longer lose yourself trying to keep them. You stop performing to be accepted because you already accept yourself. You attract those who recognize your worth without being told, who respect your space, and who align with your peace. The relationships that come after you've learned to enjoy solitude are deeper, calmer, and more authentic because they're built from abundance, not emptiness. Enjoying your own company also teaches you emotional independence. You realize that being alone doesn't mean being lonely, it means being free. It means you no longer rely on someone else to make you feel seen or significant. It means you know how to comfort yourself, how to encourage yourself, and how to rebuild yourself when life gets heavy. That kind of independence doesn't make you cold. It makes you complete. It allows you to give love freely instead of desperately seeking it. The people you attract after that transformation are different. They don't come to fill your silence, they come to share it. They don't take your peace, they add to it. They don't demand your energy, they match it. They don't fear your independence, they respect it. And you can only recognize those people because you've already learned how to recognize yourself. You know what harmony feels like because you found it within. When you love your own company, you raise your standards naturally. You no longer settle for half-hearted effort or conditional love. You no longer tolerate confusion disguised as care. You seek presence over promises, depth over drama, and truth over attention. You begin to protect your energy with quiet confidence because you finally understand that peace is priceless. You don't chase people anymore. You attract them effortlessly by being grounded, authentic, and whole. The journey of learning to enjoy your own company is the foundation of every healthy connection you'll ever build. It transforms the way you love, the way you communicate, and the way you choose who gets access to your life. You stop operating from fear of being alone and start operating from clarity about who belongs with you. The right people come when you no longer need them to complete you. They come when your presence feels like home to yourself. Because once you've learned to be happy alone, you'll never again settle for anyone who disturbs your peace just to make you feel less lonely. Silence is not emptiness, it's the sound of your soul recalibrating. Most people are afraid of silence because it feels unfamiliar. They've built their lives around noise. Constant conversations, endless scrolling background music, and the hum of distractions that keep them from hearing their own thoughts. The moment everything goes quiet, they panic. They reach for something to fill the space, anything to avoid what that silence might reveal. But silence isn't the absence of sound, it's the presence of awareness. It's the place where your mind, body, and spirit begin to align again after being pulled in too many directions. The world moves fast, and in that pace, it's easy to lose yourself. You give your energy to tasks, your attention to people, your thoughts to worries, and your peace to noise. You become so used to reacting that you forget how to simply be. Silence forces you to pause. It invites you to listen, not just to the world, but to yourself. It's in that quiet space that you begin to feel again, think clearly again, and reconnect with what truly matters. That's what recalibration is, returning to your natural rhythm after being thrown off balance by everything outside of you. Silence holds wisdom that noise can never teach. It's where clarity is born, where intuition speaks the loudest, and where truth rises to the surface. The thoughts that seem buried deep finally have a chance to breathe. The emotions you've ignored begin to soften. The dreams you've silenced begin to whisper again. Silence gives you the space to hear the voice that's been drowned out, your own. And when you start to listen, you realize how much guidance and peace have always been waiting within you. Many people think silence is unproductive because it doesn't produce visible results. They measure their days by how much they do instead of how deeply they feel. But silence isn't wasted time, it's healing time. It's where decisions become clearer, where tension dissolves, and where creativity awakens. The greatest ideas are often born in stillness because the mind finally has room to wander without pressure. The greatest strength is often found in silence because you're no longer running from yourself. You're returning to yourself. Silence can be uncomfortable at first because it confronts you with the truth you've been avoiding. It brings forward the emotions you've buried under business: sadness, fear, loneliness, confusion. But what feels heavy at first eventually becomes light. Because the moment you face what's within, you stop being controlled by it. Silence allows you to process, release, and realign. It's the process of your soul finding balance after being stretched too thin. It's recalibration not through effort, but through presence. When you spend time in silence, you begin to notice details you once overlooked: the rhythm of your breathing, the weight of your thoughts, the sensations in your body, the calm beneath the chaos. You realize that silence isn't empty at all. It's full of messages. It's full of healing. It's full of guidance that the noise of the world can never give you. Every moment of stillness is your soul tuning itself back to peace, reminding you that you don't need to chase clarity. You just need to allow it. The more you embrace silence, the more comfortable you become with yourself. You start to understand that peace doesn't come from escaping life, but from returning to yourself within it. Silence teaches you how to respond instead of react, how to observe instead of overthink, how to be present instead of distracted. It gives you control not over others, but over your own energy. It's not withdrawal from the world, it's preparation to return to it with more intention, calm, and strength. In silence, your priorities rearrange themselves. You stop wasting energy on things that don't matter. You stop chasing validation and start seeking meaning. You learn to trust your instincts because you can finally hear them clearly. You become grounded, patient, and aware. The world around you doesn't change, but the way you move through it does. Silence becomes your anchor, your reset button, your reminder that everything you've been looking for outside is already inside, waiting to be heard. When you stop running from solitude, it becomes your greatest teacher. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid being alone because solitude feels like a mirror. It reflects the truth we try to hide. Our insecurities, our fears, our regrets, and our unfulfilled desires. We fill our days with distractions to avoid that reflection. We chase noise, relationships, and business because silence feels uncomfortable. But solitude isn't something to fear, it's something to embrace. The moment you stop running from it, you discover that solitude doesn't break you, it builds you. Solitude is the space where life slows down enough for you to finally hear yourself. It's where you start to understand what you truly think and feel without outside opinions shaping your perspective. When you're constantly surrounded by people, it's easy to absorb their energy, their expectations, and their beliefs until you can no longer tell what's yours and what's theirs. But when you're alone, everything unnecessary falls away. What remains is you, raw, unfiltered, and honest. That's where the lessons begin. Solitude teaches you patience. It teaches you how to sit with uncertainty without forcing answers. It shows you that growth doesn't always come from doing more. Sometimes it comes from being still. It teaches you how to listen, not just to your thoughts, but to the quiet voice within that knows the way forward. In a world obsessed with speed, solitude becomes your reminder that depth is more valuable than pace. It helps you slow down, breathe, and rediscover what truly matters. The reason so many people fear solitude is because it exposes what they've been avoiding. It brings up emotions they've buried, wounds they haven't healed, and truths they don't want to face. But facing those things is exactly what transforms you. Solitude forces you to confront your inner world, to understand why you feel lost, what's been holding you back, and who you're becoming. It's not easy, but it's necessary. You can't evolve without awareness, and awareness is born in the silence of solitude. When you stop running, you begin to realize that solitude isn't loneliness. Loneliness is the absence of connection. Solitude is the presence of self. It's not about being without people, it's about being with yourself in a way that feels whole. It's the space where your soul repairs itself from the chaos of the world. It's where your mind rests, your heart recalibrates, and your spirit grows stronger. What once felt like emptiness becomes peace. What once felt like isolation becomes alignment. In solitude, you start to see patterns. The choices you keep repeating, the relationships you keep attracting, the fears you keep feeding. You begin to understand that nothing changes until you do. You stop blaming others for your unhappiness and start taking responsibility for your healing. You learn to forgive yourself for the mistakes you made when you didn't know better. You begin to let go of the versions of yourself that no longer fit who you are becoming. Solitude becomes your teacher because it shows you truth without judgment. You learn to enjoy your own company, to find beauty in the simplicity of quiet moments. You discover hobbies, ideas, and passions that might have remained hidden if you never slowed down. You start to build confidence from within, no longer needing constant reassurance from others. That's the quiet power of solitude. It strengthens your relationship with yourself until validation becomes unnecessary. When you stop running from solitude, you also stop settling. You stop forcing connections just to fill the silence. You stop accepting less than you deserve because you finally know your worth. You begin to attract people and experiences that match your peace, not your pain. You stop chasing and start allowing. Life becomes less about proving and more about becoming. Every great transformation begins in solitude. It's the space between endings and beginnings, the pause where reflection turns into wisdom. Solitude doesn't demand anything from you. It simply invites you to meet yourself. And when you do, you realize it's not the absence of love, joy, or connection. It's the foundation that allows all those things to flourish. Because once you've learned from solitude, you stop fearing it forever. You understand that being alone was never about being empty. It was about finding everything that was missing inside you all along. True connection starts when you no longer depend on others to feel complete. For most of our lives, we are taught that happiness comes from what we get from others: love, attention, validation, or approval. We are conditioned to believe that our worth is measured by how people treat us, how many like us, or how deeply someone loves us. But that belief is what keeps so many people trapped in shallow relationships and endless disappointment. Because when you rely on others to make you feel complete, you give away your power. You build your identity on unstable ground, always shifting with someone else's opinion or presence. The truth is, no one can fill a void that exists within you. No matter how kind, caring, or loving someone is, they can only meet you at the depth you've met yourself. If you haven't built a foundation of self-acceptance, every compliment will feel temporary, every silence will feel like rejection, and every relationship will feel like a test of your worth. You'll keep chasing connection, not because you want to share love, but because you're trying to borrow it. You'll depend on others to remind you that you matter, and when they fail to do so, you'll crumble. That's not connection, that's dependency disguised as love. True connection begins the moment you realize that your completeness has nothing to do with anyone else. It begins when you turn inward and learn to meet your own emotional needs. When you stop waiting for someone to make you feel seen and instead learn to see yourself. When you stop begging for attention and start giving yourself presence. When you stop needing others to validate your worth and begin to recognize it in your reflection. This shift doesn't make you cold or distant. It makes you whole. And wholeness is magnetic. When you no longer depend on others to complete you, you start to attract relationships built on authenticity instead of fear. You stop chasing those who play with your peace because your self-respect won't allow it. You no longer confuse intensity with intimacy or attachment with connection. You begin to seek people who add value to your life, not people who define it. And because you've learned to be emotionally independent, you bring calm energy instead of chaos. You connect from love, not lack. When you feel whole on your own, you communicate differently. You no longer speak to be heard, you speak to be understood. You no longer love to be rescued, you love to share growth. You no longer enter relationships to fill a void, you enter to expand together. There's no desperation in your love, no anxiety in your silence, no fear in your solitude. You learn that the healthiest relationships are not built on dependence, but on interdependence. Two complete people choosing to walk together, not to lean on each other for survival, but to rise together in strength. This kind of connection requires courage. It means confronting the parts of yourself that crave validation and asking why. It means healing the old wounds that made you believe you were unworthy of love unless someone else proved it. It means sitting with yourself long enough to realize that you are already enough. And once you reach that realization, everything changes. You stop trying to prove your worth in relationships. You stop people pleasing to earn affection. You stop losing yourself to keep others. You begin to love from freedom instead of fear. True connection is not about finding someone who completes you. It's about sharing life with someone who complements you. It's about mutual respect, emotional honesty, and growth. You don't need them to fix you because you've already done the work. You don't cling to them out of fear of being alone because you've learned that solitude is not the enemy. You love them not because they fill your emptiness, but because they inspire your wholeness. When you stop depending on others to feel complete, you create space for real love to enter, love that doesn't control, consume, or demand, love that allows freedom, individuality, and peace. You realize that connection isn't built on need, but on choice. Two individuals choosing to share their completeness rather than borrow it. And in that space, relationships stop being a place to lose yourself and start becoming a space to find more of who you are. Because the truest connection will always begin with the relationship you have with yourself.